I really didn't want to start my Living with Asperger Syndrome series like this, but it's better or just as good as any other way to start off a series like this, to have the viewers understand what it's about. I'm doing this in response to a lot of comments that I would see from various sites, and even media coverage of law enforcement and the family of Elliot Rodger suspecting that he had Asperger Syndrome. And it really rubbed me the wrong way. The media and the public are blaming this on Asperger Syndrome. And I'd have to completely disagree for a number of reasons. The characteristics of Elliot Rodger are more characteristic of narcissistic personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder. And I can think of one other case with antisocial personality disorder that Elliot Rodger seemed similar to, and it happened in the 90s. But that's another story for another day, perhaps. I mean, I don't know where this is going. I just want to get back on track. But the two reasons why I'd have to disagree with the media and comments that I would see on various sources that he had Asperger Syndrome was because people on the spectrum have heightened senses, including hearing. And if the official story is true about Elliot Rodger stabbing to death 3 of his roommates, then it's safe to say that as he was doing that, there'd be a lot of screaming and a lot of crying, unless there were other circumstances at hand keeping them from doing so. But let's say in the case there wasn't, they'd be screaming and crying. And not only from one person, it'd be from 2. It'd be from 2 others, more or less at the same time, reacting to Elliot stabbing one victim at a time. And then let's say there was a confrontation or a scuffle, there would be at least 3 social interactions that would be completely overwhelming, and we can freeze on the spot if our senses are overloaded, which in that case it would be. Also, they claimed that he gunned down passers-by while speeding in a BMW. Both actions would induce sensory overload, because I know that I'm not super into fast stuff unless it's predictable, like a roller coaster or something like that. But in a car where anything can happen, I'll immediately flip out, especially if I was driving. So those are my 2 reasons for why I don't think he's on the autistic spectrum or had Asperger Syndrome at all. Not to mention the characteristics in which he did express in the videos that he had made. he had high self-esteem only to a camera that he was in front of and was in control of. But when he was at the red carpet, in the footage where he was at the red carpet with his father, he was completely disconnected from the people that were around him. So who he was in the video was a completely other person than who he claimed to be, or who he was at the red carpet. So and not to mention the fact that he went into such deep lengths to fit in with society. Rather than trying to handle his limitations on the spectrum. He was too preoccupied with what others thought than what he thought for himself. I mean, don't get me wrong. People on the spectrum, we do like to feel nice from others, but if it gets to the point where we lose ourselves, or at least in my case, because there's really no two Aspies, we'll just give up. Also, not to mention, given that he had such little acceptance from society, in a case like this, if it were to translate to an Aspie or someone on the autistic spectrum, we would sooner kill ourselves before we killed anyone else, because we try to keep social interaction to a minimum. And we usually stick to routine. So that's also another reason why it's next to impossible for someone on the spectrum to commit a crime, because we can overthink. And when we overthink, we weigh out the possibility of what will happen outside of our hands if we were to do something new. So usually we try to stay away from that sort of thing. So yeah, it's the change factor. The change factor makes it really difficult, or next to impossible, if not impossible, for anyone on the spectrum to commit murder, unless it was completely accidental. But a mass shooting like this is, I'd have to say, it's completely impossible, given the way we're wired. And gunfire is pretty loud. I can't remember if I remembered that. And not to mention, yeah, there's the short-term memory too. Like, right here, I'm kind of struggling right here, because I'm thinking about whether what I'm saying is going to make any sense in the end, and have to get my facts straight, and realizing that others are going to listen to this once I release it. But without further ado, I'll just end it. I'll just end this video, because I'm kind of just rambling. But whatever you can take from what I've said, Elliot Rodger is not an Aspie or on the autistic spectrum, because I seriously feel that if this gets out of hand with the misdirection, that it could be really dangerous for us. And I'd rather say something about it and not have something happen than not say something about it and something happen. So yeah, it's pretty early in the morning where I'm at, so I'm done. Goodbye.